Welcome to Trailblazers, the podcast where we sit down with contrarian tech leaders who found conventional success in unconventional ways. I'm your host, Erica Wenger, founding general partner of Park Rangers Capital. Each week, we uncover the stories, strategies, and moments of grit that define the builders shaping the future. They're not just chasing unicorns, but instead creating elephants, companies, firms, or movements built to last. On Trailblazers, we spotlight founders who succeed by doing things differently, not by following the playbook, but by rewriting it. Many of those unconventional builders and the VCs backing them run on Brex because it helps them scale with speed and focus. From smart corporate cards and high-yield banking to AI-powered expense management, Brex gives startups the financial stack they need from day one so they can spend more time building and less time managing back-office operations. More than 30,000 companies, from breakout startups like Anthropic and Cursor to global leaders like DoorDash and Plaid, trust Brex to help them spend smarter and move faster. That's why we, as a venture firm and also the podcast, run on Brex too. Sign up at brex.com/trailblazerspod to get started and claim exclusive rewards. That's brex.com/TRAILBLAZERSPOD. Welcome to the very first episode of the Trailblazers podcast. I am so excited to have you all here. For those of you that were loyal Dear 20-something listeners, thank you for sticking around and giving me a chance to explain myself. The name change is definitely very exciting for me, but I wanted to use this podcast episode, the solo episode, to talk about why the name change, how the podcast is evolving, and how I'm evolving along with it. 4 years ago, I started this show because I wanted to become friends with Mark Cuban. It's a funny story, which I will get into a little bit later in the podcast. Ultimately, I kind of achieved my goal. We are acquaintances. He follows me on Instagram, so maybe we're friends. But, so much has changed since then, and I wanted to sort of walk through where we're at now as a podcast, what you can expect moving forward, and sort of make my case for why this is a show we'd love to have you still be a part of. I'm going to use my computer as a little outline and just sort of get to it. Okay, great. So first, I want to talk about the spark of why Dear 20-something. Why did I even start this? And the Mark Cuban of it all. So I started this podcast when I was a 20-something in COVID, feeling quite lonely. It was the era of Clubhouse and Spotify Green Room and Twitter Spaces, if you remember. It was a lot of live audio. And I saw rumblings on the internet. I believe it was a press article that said that Mark Cuban was starting the next great live audio app, I think they said. I don't even think they said podcast. So I cold outreached to the team and I just said, I'd love to learn more and be supportive. They reached back out and basically pitched me on being a founding creator on their podcast. Like I said, I wanted to be friends with Mark Cuban. So I said, okay, if you need a podcaster, I'll be a podcaster. And I'd kind of had this idea in the back of my mind as someone who was in my 20s, who was working very hard, building one startup during the day, another startup at night, that I wanted to interview really successful people about their 20s. I've talked about this in previous episodes, but I feel that a lot of the internet talks about people's big successes that often happen in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s. And the figuring it out journey of your 20s isn't often discussed. And so that's why I wanted to start the podcast. It was crazy. It was exciting. It was, again, COVID times. So everyone was locked at home and we did live audio. So it was like a live show. And I learned a lot. At that phase of my life, I was very much like a 20-something operator figuring it out. Now I'm in a very different headspace, which I'll get to, and that's why we're sort of shifting the brand of the podcast. Obviously, the Mark Cuban of it all was very exciting, just to have someone who I had respected for so long on Shark Tank, to know my name, know the podcast. That was a really exciting thing, and it taught me, too, that when there are people you admire, you should go after it and reach out to them and try to build something or do something that they will respect or that they're particularly excited about. And I've sort of taken that philosophy throughout my career, and it's really helped me because I do think these people are one email away. Mark Cuban's notorious for replying to emails, right? Just reach out. Here are some early lessons from the Dear 20-something era, which is what I'm calling it. Discipline. So, I had to put out an episode. I believe I started with every other week, and then it became weekly, which is what it is now. Now it's 6 episodes a month, actually, which we'll get to. I had to show up, and it was live. So, I really had to show up and be precise and know my stuff. I also learned a lot about vulnerability. I remember vividly when I started Dear 20-something, I had this, big lump in my throat every time I would try and do a podcast because I was like, what if I'm going to mess up and I have to read all my questions perfectly? And I remember I read this book. It was called Be by Jessica Zweig. If you know me, you know I talk about this book a lot. And she talks about the importance of, creating connection through vulnerability and authenticity. And you can't create real connection otherwise. And so I decided to really start to let my guard down. And with every episode, I got better and better with being less anxious and being more open and sort of asking the first question, then ditching the rest, right? And just connecting with the guest. So I learned a lot through that. And then I also realized people wanted to listen, which was really cool. When I first started, we had sort of like the early fireside folks. And as I, moved into more of the tech space and started to build a little bit more of a following, people started to tune in and they really enjoyed the conversations. So I was very grateful and learned a lot from that time. I will say one anecdote just about when I thought this really could be working is when I asked Meg Jay, who wrote the book, The Defining Decade. Actually, that book inspired the podcast. I asked her to come on, and that episode did numbers when it came out. I didn't really realize the SEO of podcasts. If you have someone on who doesn't really do podcasts, and then people are going to use that search bar to type in their name, your podcast can just by default do quite well. So that was the spark of Dear 20-something. And, next I want to kind of talk about growing up together because it's been 4 years of this podcast. We're entering a brand new era for Trailblazers. And I have had a very parallel journey in my career, sort of growing up, if you will. So when I started Dear 20-something, I was an operator, founder, in my nights and weekends and an operator during the day. I then transitioned to being an investor at a fund, learned a lot. I loved venture capital. I loved connecting with people. I loved meeting founders. I loved working with founders. And then I ultimately started my own fund. And so now I'm sort of in this founder investor double hat, if you will. And it's a whole different ballgame, like being an employee at a company versus now running my own company. So I've grown up a lot, as the podcast has too. Another way that things have grown up is like the level of legitimacy of the podcast. So like I said, when I started it, it was audio only, COVID in my bedroom that I shared with a roommate. It was definitely a different time. And now, then we went from that to, I believe it was like audio, maybe with a little bit of video, but still sort of sharing that apartment with the roommate and trying to find my little corner. Then it transitioned into audio video, but we did like a really formal recording, kind of like a fancy Zoom. And then now we're here with like a podcast set and beautiful fake trees behind me and a wonderful editor helping. And we've really elevated. And so I feel that the same way, the podcast has grown up, I have as well, and vice versa. And, there have been a lot of really exciting wins with the podcast, 133 episodes, tens of thousands of downloads. I now have 75,000 followers. Like, I know I'm gonna look back on this episode and say like, oh, wow, things have changed even more. But we're getting somewhere and we're building something. And I'm really grateful for you guys to be here too. And on a personal note, I talk about how the podcast has grown, how my career has grown. So is my personal life. So I no longer live with that roommate. I'm actually engaged. So things have changed. I now live in New York City instead of Los Angeles. So, the way that I've sort of grown up in front of you guys, I hope to continue doing so and let the podcast evolve with me. I've actually used Gusto at 3 different companies, and every time it's been such a relief. It's simple, it's reliable, my paycheck was always on time, no drama. And unlike the big clunky payroll systems out there, Gusto is affordable and designed for teams like ours. Gusto is online payroll and benefits software built for small businesses. It's all-in-one, remote-friendly, and incredibly easy to use. So you can pay, hire, onboard, and support your team from anywhere. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/trailblazers and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/trailblazers. One more time, gusto.com/TRAILBLAZERS. OpenPhone is built to help small business owners and growing teams stay on top of every customer conversation. Instead of juggling calls, texts, and voicemails on a personal phone, OpenPhone gives you a dedicated business line and an all-in-one inbox that works on any device. Teams can collaborate in real time, picking up conversations seamlessly and responding faster than ever. And with OpenPhone's AI agent, Sona, handling after-hour calls, answering questions, and even booking appointments, you'll never miss a lead. Rated 4.7 stars on G2 and trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, OpenPhone is the smarter way to grow without missing a customer. OpenPhone is offering my listeners 20% off of your first 3 months at openphone.com/trailblazers. That's openphone.com/trailblazers, which is TRAILBLAZERS. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the rebrand moment. So I keep talking about Dear 20-something, what it was, why we started it, and now I'm going to talk about where we're going and why we made the switch. Dear 20-something no longer fit my age, my brand, and especially not my firm. Even something as simple as like color palettes. The colors were very blue and light and playful, and the firm's colors are, deeper beiges and greens, and just it didn't work any longer. The tone was very different. And then we're rebranding in 3 different main ways. So the first is identity. So wanting this to align with Park Rangers Capital, my venture firm, and my, Elephants Not Unicorns vision and thesis. If you're not familiar with that, I recommend listening to one of those previous solo episodes about that essay, Elephants Not Unicorns. But that is my entire focus right now. I am like 100 million, 20% involved in Park Rangers Capital, focused on Park Rangers Capital. And I wanted the podcast to fit into that media arm that we are building out as part of the firm. We're really focused on building, and I'll talk about this in future episodes, but we're really focused on building out our own distribution as a firm. And a big, big part of that is podcasting. And so I didn't want it to be this side separate thing. I wanted it to be part of my entire focus, which is the venture firm. The second rebrand lever is monetization. So we now have sponsors, which is really exciting. I've been working with so many incredible sponsors, whether it's through hosting events, whether it's through speaking at their conferences, honestly introducing them to founders or VCs that might want to use their software. I've built really great relationships with a lot of folks in the ecosystem who do incredible work, really, really incredible work, incredible community building. And the podcast was really just a natural fit for that partnership to deepen. Because we had a lot of folks asking us to be more involved with the fund and more involved with our online community. And this is a great way for us to talk about the companies that we really love and use, and share them with you guys. And if you're interested in working with them, come through us. We'll make, personalized introductions and get you all taken care of. I will just say a quick note on the monetization piece. I think a lot of podcasts will do like a miscellaneous ad reads here and there for a bunch of different sponsors. That's okay. I think that can totally work for certain podcasts. I think about it very differently. I view these as partnerships. And so with all of our sponsors, this isn't just like a one and done thing. They are committed to a long-term partnership with us. So you'll hear them in every episode. I'll be talking about them incessantly, and they are our preferred partner across the fund. So it's not just the podcast. It's folks who pitch us what they're building. It's when we go to a dinner and people ask us what software we use. Like, we are devoted to these amazing partners. And then the third identity, or the third rebrand lever that we are using here is production, obviously. So I mentioned this before. We're going all in. We've got the New York studio. It's a lot more cozy and special, and we'll be bringing on, obviously, amazing guests here in the future episodes. So next, we're going to talk about the road ahead. So you know what to expect. You can decide in this moment if you want to listen to more episodes or not, what's going to change, what's not. So here's the vision. We want to be New York City's flagship tech podcast. I don't want to be like every other tech podcast where we're always hyping the hype. I think that that's great and breaking news is awesome, but we want to have really long, thoughtful conversations with people who are doing things differently in tech, doing things differently in venture. I love this word reimagining, right? Like, they're really reimagining what business and venture can look like. And New York, I think, there's this constant debate. SF, New York, Miami has its moments, Austin has its moments, LA has its moments. There is such an incredible hub here in New York City. I'm so proud to be part of the New York ecosystem. And there's so much happening here. I want to spotlight it. People come through here all the time. People live here. So we hope to be the shop where a lot of folks come when they have news to share and they're in New York. We also are going to hopefully do more experiments. So live shows are something that I've always wanted to do more. We do have one planned in a couple months, which I'm extremely excited about. It's with someone who I've been a longtime fan of, also wrote an incredible book, but also is an incredible operator. So, we're going to do video first clips, another experiment. We're going to, put it all over the internet and see who comes in and who's excited about this. And then collaborations. I think that there's a lot of really exciting people in tech and venture doing things differently, and we'll see how that evolves, but we're open to experiments, and we're open to just, being a podcast, but being a podcast that's open to new ideas. Here's what I want Trailblazers to stand for. And this is for those of you that are listening and still maybe undecided, or you're excited, but you don't really know what to expect. Our tagline is we interview contrarian tech leaders who found conventional success in unconventional ways. Here's what you can expect. Like I said, not hyping hype. We're speaking with people who are reimagining venture and business building. We're making founder advice real, accessible, and human. So, if you follow me at all on TikTok, you know that that's my whole thing. I just basically reply to questions and give the honest tea on what's going on and give my take on how you should do a fundraise and how to build your cap table and how to think about go-to-market and all that good stuff. Opening up a lot of what's quite opaque in this industry. And then I think another thing is being a little bit more non-bro-y, if you will. I think that it's really important to have diverse guests on the podcast, have folks from all walks of life, all genders, all races, all geographies. That's what I really hope that this podcast stands for. And I hope that when you look at our slate of guests, you see yourself reflected in them. And that's really, really the goal. On Trailblazers, we're always talking about multiplying your impact. And that's exactly what Athena helps you do. Athena pairs you with a world-class executive assistant who becomes a true force multiplier for your business and your life. Working with my Athena assistant has been transformative. Gab was instrumental in raising Park Rangers Capital's fund in ways that I could have never imagined an assistant could contribute, from closing six-figure checks to identifying new LPs we should meet to matching my tone perfectly in follow-up emails. He's elevated my capacity as a founder by giving me more time to focus on the highest leverage work. Athena isn't just about scheduling meetings, it's about unlocking leverage. Hundreds of founders, investors, and executives trust Athena to free their time and scale their impact. Athena is offering our listeners $2,000 off for their first year of service and priority onboarding. And you want that, trust me, there's a very long wait list. When you're ready to multiply your impact and free up time for the things only you can do, go to athenago.me/Erica-Wenger. That's athenago.me/ERICA-WENGER. All right, everybody. So this is the last section of what I'm going to talk about today. Just in closing, I just want to thank you all for being here. If you are still listening, that means that you are either a new Trailblazers subscriber, you are maybe a Dear 20-something subscriber that has stayed with us through our journey and grown up with me in front of the camera, in front of the podcast. So thank you for being here. I'm very appreciative. If you love Dear 20-something, I really think you'll love Trailblazers. And it's the same DNA. It's just in a better, elevated format. That's my honest take. But you'll be the judge of that. And it's really cool that this podcast has been through my whole career, my sort of post-grad career. And I would recommend anyone out there that's thinking about it. It's really rewarding. It's really rewarding to not only build the network, but have this sort of online capsule of who I've been, the conversations I've had, the ideas I've had. So I can't recommend it enough. The best is yet to come, and I cannot wait to share this next chapter with you guys. Of course, please share, subscribe, with a friend. I'm excited for what's to come. So thanks for being here, and I will see you next week. Thanks so much for listening to the Trailblazers podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow the show so you never miss an episode. You can also support our work by sharing it with a friend or leaving a quick review. It helps more contrarian builders find us. For more on Park Rangers Capital and our community of elephant founders, head to parkrangerscap.com or find me online at Erica_Wenger. Until next time, keep trailblazing.